What is up, Bleacher Report? Jesse here with Last Second Sports, coming at you 1 week before the NFL draft. I cannot wait. I'm so excited for this draft. This draft to me is the most important draft that the 49ers have had in maybe this regime's history. It's a big time draft that is going to set the tone for the future of the 49ers. And tomorrow we are going to do our final mock draft. Tonight, we will talk a little bit of draft. We'll do it in a different sense where I'm going to give you two players that I don't want division rivals to draft and give you reasons why. But first, we've got to talk some interesting news. There's just been too much conversation happening around Brock Purdy to not bring it up tonight. And it started really with Puka Nakua coming out, talking a little bit of trash, maybe. I mean, maybe you consider it trash, maybe you consider it truth, what have you. But he was on with Julian Edelman and was asked about Brock Purdy and his contract. And Julian Edelman said, "Hey, do you think Brock Purdy is going to get a contract that starts with a 5?" And Puka kind of laughed and said, "No." He goes, "What about high fours?" And he laughed again and said, "No." He said, "What about low fours?" And he said, "I think Brock's a smart guy, and around mid fours he knows is about where he should be, and if he gets paid more than that, then the window for the 49ers is essentially closed, and he shouldn't ask for more than that," which I find really interesting because it first of all, just because you're a player doesn't make you right. I hate it when people strictly use what a player says, and it's like, well, the player says it, so it must be right. Players are not GMs. Most ex players have some of the worst takes on sports. I think players' opinions really matter when it comes to locker room dynamics or breaking down film, that type of stuff. But when it comes to player evaluation, I don't think that they know any more than what we do outside of their position. I'll give you an example. If you have a great player, a Hall of Fame player that played running back, and all of a sudden is talking about quarterback play, I don't think he knows any more than you and I. Is if you've put in the research and you've put in the film watching and the hard work, I don't believe when it comes to talent evaluation on that position, they know any more than you or I. So don't take what Puka Nakua is taking as gospel. But what I will say is, I do find it interesting when a current player, a competitor, a division rival is willing to speak about this and not in a manner that you would normally get from a football player where it's everything is positive. Like, oh no, most players would be like, hey, he's great and he's outplayed his contract and I want all my brothers to get paid and he deserves whatever's coming to him. That's not what he said. That's what most players would say. So whether you agree with him or not, I do think it's refreshing that he's very honest in what he's thinking. Doesn't make him right. However, I will say he clearly aligns with my opinion, which is the 49ers shouldn't break the bank for Brock Purdy. And the moment that they do, once that number reaches a high amount annually, the 49ers are in serious trouble because Brock Purdy is not the type of player that is going to carry a team. And we saw that last year. And there's nothing wrong with that. There really isn't many quarterbacks in the league that can do that, that despite what's going on around them. And this is something I want to clear up as well. This has nothing to do with winning or losing. Winning and losing is a total team effort. What this has to do is separating the play of an individual player versus what's going on around him. So when you look at a guy like Joe Burrow, for example, last year, who had a dumpster fire of a defense around him, he did everything he could to put the team in a position to win. They scored tons of points. His stats were great. He was clutch when they needed it most. Defense just gave up too much, so they didn't win enough games. They didn't make the playoffs. But as an individual, regardless of what went on around him, he performed. Some players, like Brock Purdy last year, they didn't win. That's okay. But he contributed to a lot of those losses. He had ball in hand, games on the line, and I don't want to say he choked, but he didn't come through multiple times. 5, maybe 6 games, he didn't come through. And so for me, that's not a knock on Brock. That's just saying he's not one of the 4 guys, maybe 5 guys in the world playing the quarterback position that can do what a Joe Burrow, a Mahomes, a Lamar, a Josh Allen, potentially Matthew Stafford when he's in his prime, where it doesn't matter what's going on around him, they produce. Not many quarterbacks can do that. And so the quarterbacks that can't do that, which is a majority of quarterbacks, Brock just happens to fall within that. They don't deserve elite money. And the moment you pay them elite money, it becomes an issue. And I think that's what Book is saying here is like, hey, he's not a bad player, he's a good player. But hopefully he recognizes his limitations and what he truly can bring to a team. And if he does that, the 49ers, their window is not going to be closed. But if he thinks he's more than what he is, it will be closed. And I agree with that. One thing I will say about Brock, though, and I want to be clear about this as well, is that Brock is the type of player that when things are going great around him, he can play at an extremely high level. And that is also not something that all quarterbacks can do. And this is why he's a borderline top 10 guy, because I think guys that are 17, 18, 19, and worse, those quarterbacks, even if things are going great around them, they're a dumpster fire. They turn the ball over a ton. They don't make plays. They don't help their team win. Brock Purdy does that when things are going great around him. And everybody makes it sound like, oh, you could just insert any quarterback in the league in there and they're going to. Not every quarterback can do that. Not every quarterback can do that. I think I look at Will Levis as a great example last year. Will Levis actively was like sabotaging wins single-handedly. If you put Will Levis, who was a starter last year, in the 49ers offense with all that talent 2 years ago, they lose a lot of games. So Brock Purdy can do something that a lot of starting quarterbacks cannot do. He just can't do the special things that a select few can. And so for that reason, you can't pay him elite money. You can't. Not if you truly want to try to win a Super Bowl. And so I agree with Puka Nacua, but I want to include what Puka Nacua said. I want to walk through the timeline real quick of the offseason and then also end with what Matt Mayoko, beat writer, also a part of NBC Sports Bay Area, what he had to say about the Brock Purdy contract is where it stands today. So when the season ended, players are clearing out their lockers. Brock Purdy is asked about his contract, and he says something along the lines of, hey, I want to get the deal done early. I want to be here for all the offseason programs. And as long as we can get it done early, that's something I'm motivated to do because I want to be here and I want to take part with the team. All right, that's cool. You get end of season press conference with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, and they say something similar. Hey, we want to get it done early. We want Brock Purdy to be here for a long time. We want him to be here as long as we are, plus more. He's our guy. We want to get it done early. Okay. Well, technically, they could have started working on a contract as soon as the regular season ended. We're over 3 months into this process. Okay. So if they truly wanted to get it done early, they could have done that already. All right. So then things change a little bit. We get to the combine, which I think was in early March. And John Lynch is still saying, hey, Brock's our guy. We want him here long term. We want him here longer than we're going to be here. Says all the right things. But then he also mixes in, there are no guarantees. And based off of the league rules, they get to keep him no matter what. They don't have to pay Brock. And Brock Purdy really doesn't have a choice, which I find really, really interesting. Okay. Then you get to the owners' meetings about 2 weeks ago. John Lynch says, hey, it's not too optimistic to think that this thing gets done before the offseason workouts start. All the offseason activities. Well, the offseason activities start here in about 4 days. And nothing is done right now. And based on reports, it doesn't seem like they're close yet. So All that optimism is about 4 days away from going out the window. And then you also had Jed York finishing every sentence with, "Hey, well, we got to pay our quarterback and we got to pay Brock. And yes, we want him to be the guy, but we had to let these guys go. And we're in a different situation where we can't just stack the team because of our quarterback," and putting all the blame on Brock and his contract, which was really weird. But the way he ended the overall conversation when he was asked about contract negotiations with Brock, and he basically said, "It will get done when Brock wants it to get done. When Brock is ready, we will get this thing done." And at that time, I thought to myself, you know, that really sounds like the 49ers have made an offer. And at least for now, they're standing very firm on that offer. And it's up to Brock to either accept or decline. And that's where they're at with it. Well, then today, you get Matt Mayoko, who's very plugged in. He comes out and he says, "Hey, the 49ers have made an offer. Brock Purdy and his team aren't interested. They remain optimistic that a deal will get done. But at this time, nothing is close. They're not close." And when you pair that with Jed York's comments 2 weeks ago, that really kind of hammers things home that an offer has been made. It doesn't seem like it's going to get accepted. And as of right now, the 49ers are standing pretty firm in this. Hey, we made an offer. You've countered. We disagree. We'll figure it out later. So I find all of this so fascinating. But here's what I will also say: the 49ers do this. Like, this is not the first offseason that we've seen the 49ers take a prolonged amount of time to get something done contract wise. I mean, in fact, if they were to get a contract done now, it would be extremely early. The 49ers either sign their guys mid-season, or if they make it to an end of a season, they basically wait till July or August. That's usually what happens. And in some cases, September. So this is not out of the ordinary. And really, truthfully, it's not out of the ordinary for what other teams have done. In fact, I've gathered the last 10 major contracts signed by quarterbacks, and I'll give you the dates in which they were signed. Josh Allen this year signed March 9th. That was early. Jalen Hurts, April 17th. That's today. Jared Goff, May 13th. That's about a month from now. Trevor Lawrence, June 13th. Kyler Murray, July 21st. Justin Herbert, July 25th. Tua Tagovailoa, July 26th. Now remember, Tua and Jordan Love have the same agent. So Tua signed on the 26th. Jordan Love signed on the 27th. You had Joe Burrow going all the way out until September 7th, and Dak Prescott going all the way out until September 8th. So right now, the 49ers are not behind the curve. This is not that out of the ordinary. What I will say, though, is when you look at how those other teams had negotiations with their franchise quarterback or perceived franchise quarterback, you didn't hear the things that Jed York is saying, where it's, "Yeah, we think he's top 10 as long as he's surrounded by talent and has Kyle Shanahan. Oh, well, whenever he's ready to get the deal done, he'll come to the table." Or, "Hey, league rules permit, doesn't matter. Even if we don't get a deal done, he's still our player." You didn't hear those types of things coming out. And the other thing that I would say is when you look at the hierarchy of good organizations on this list that has signed their quarterbacks, the best organizations got it done early. Buffalo Bills, they're a perennial organization right now, March 9th. Eagles just won a Super Bowl, perennial organization, April 17th. That's today. The Lions, not historically, not a great organization, but right now they're top notch, May 13th. It's all the bad organizations that waited till longer, arguably, except for Green Bay. Green Bay is a good organization. July 27th was the date. But Jaguars, bad organization. Arizona Cardinals, bad organization. Chargers, at that time when they signed Herbert, bad organization. Miami Dolphins, bad organization. Bengals, bad organization. Cowboys, bad organization. So the good organizations got it done early. The bad organizations took longer. And none of the organizations talked about their quarterback the way the 49ers have. And so the whole thing to me is a little bit bizarre from that standpoint. But it was something that we had to talk about because it's just dominating 49ers news right now. I really haven't talked a lot about Brock Purdy since I've been with Bleacher Report. Early on, maybe a little bit, but to me, it's like, what's there really to talk about in the sense that it seems like a contract is going to get done. I've made my point that I wouldn't pay him. I'd make him play out another year. But if I think it's going to get done, my focus immediately shifts to how can the team get better around Brock. But the longer this thing lingers, the more that comes out, it's starting to be more of a possibility that this thing doesn't get done. Now, again, I do think it gets done, but every day that passes, every rumor that comes out, it's less and less likely. So we'll see how this thing plays out. Didn't expect to be talking about Brock Purdy dominant news a week before the draft, but here we are. All right, let's talk about the draft itself, though. And I've talked about everything under the sun as far as prospects go for the 49ers. I've done mock drafts with trades, I've done mock drafts without trades. I've talked about the 10 players that I would be okay if the 49ers took it, pick 11. I've talked about every pick the 49ers have and given you 3 prospects that I like at each one of those picks. I've done everything to break down this draft from a 49ers perspective. One thing I have not done, though, is talked about the 49ers division and why it's important to pay attention to it. We hope that the 49ers crush this draft and get better, but the 49ers are only one of 32 teams that are making draft picks. So while the 49ers have a gap in talent wise that they've got to close on some of the teams in their division and the teams in their conference, they are not the only ones that have an opportunity to get better next weekend. So the 49ers have gaps to close, but so do the rest of the teams in the NFL, and in particular, their division. You can't make playoff runs and Super Bowl runs unless you at least play well enough in your division to make the playoffs and hopefully win your division. So that's where it starts. Right now, I think you can make the argument that the 49ers are the 4th best roster in the division, 4th best team. Maybe you can go up to 3rd. I don't believe that you can say number 2. And without any question, they are not the best team in this division. That is the Rams. Now, the 49ers have more picks than everybody else, which means they have more opportunities to get better, but they're going to have to crush this draft. They're also going to need help from the teams in the division. They can't have the Seahawks, Cardinals, and Rams crush the draft. And even if they crush the draft, have they closed the gap? Probably not. So when I look at the picks in the first round that the Rams, Seahawks, and Cardinals have, I've got 2 players for each team that I just hopefully does not go to that team in particular. And it's different for every team because their needs are different. What I look at when I look at their organizations and where their team needs are and the players that fit making them better, there's certain guys that I'm just like, please, under no circumstances, do not fall to the Cardinals, the Seahawks, or the Rams. So the Cardinals are first up after the 49ers in this draft. And I've got 2 players that I hope do not go to the Arizona Cardinals. Player number 1, Jahdae Barron, who I have said a million times over is either my favorite or second favorite prospect. But Jahdae Barron, specifically on the Cardinals, who needs secondary help. It's a realistic player that could go to them. And his versatility allows them to do so many things. It allows them to move any corner or safety wherever they want to fit their skill set best. And Jahdae Barron can fill in whatever else is left over. He immediately upgrades their secondary and brings a level of skill to that secondary that simply is not there. Now, Budda Baker is a phenomenal player. Max Melton, who they drafted last year, I like. They have some decent young pieces there, But Jahdae Barron solidifies that secondary. That I do not want to see from the Cardinals. So for that reason, I don't want to see Jahdae Barron go to the Cardinals. The other player I don't want to see go to the Cardinals is a player that I've said multiple times that I could see the 49ers being interested. But to me, this player really would fit with the Philadelphia Eagles because of Vic Fangio and the way that he designs his defense. Well, a similar Fangio style defense in Gannon, that makes James Pierce a very viable option. James Pierce could rush out of a 2-point stance, a 3-point stance, a 4-point stance. He can light out wide. He can stand up. He can drop in coverage. I mean, he can do everything. James Pierce fits them perfectly. And when I look at everything they've done this offseason to go out and make that defensive line formidable, and they have absolutely done that, adding another piece makes it that much harder for the 49ers to go out and execute and do the things that they need to do to continue to move the ball on third down, stay on the field. You added James Pierce. I mean, that's going to be tough. And he fits perfect with that defense. So for me, Jahdae Barron, James Pierce, those are two players that I would prefer do not go to the Arizona Cardinals. Okay. Now, two players that I think are possible for the 49ers, but I would prefer the 49ers do not draft at 11, are two players that I'm going to name for the Seahawks that I don't want to go to the Seahawks. Now, I don't think they fit the best with the 49ers at 11, but with the Seahawks and where they're drafting a few picks later and what they need, these guys fit perfect. Absolutely perfect with the Seahawks. Player number one, Kelvin Banks, offensive tackle out of Texas. Now, when you look at the Seattle Seahawks, really that's the only place that they're solidified is the offensive tackle position. But interior offensive line has been a disaster for them. They have not been able to figure it out. And when I look at Kelvin Banks, I see a guard. I think that's where he's best suited in the NFL. I think as a tackle, he can peak as a top 15 left tackle. But as a guard, I think he can be a top 5 guard, period, in the NFL. So if they draft Banks and he can kick out to tackle if there's injuries or just be their left guard, I mean, that's exactly what we don't want Seattle to do. We don't want Seattle to get better in their offensive line. That is the one area where they've had a major weakness. Please, please, please do not take Kelvin Banks to be your starting left guard. I would hate that. And another player that I would hate is Kenneth Grant, because Kenneth Grant basically allows everybody else on that defensive line to play in position. Right now, you've got guys playing out of position because they don't have that true big body, two gap eating guy who loves to stuff the run that they can just plug up the middle of that defense. And the moment that they get him, everybody else gets to go and play the position that fits them best. Kenneth Grant allows that to happen, and he would be a perfect fit for that defense and opening everything else up. For the 49ers, I think they need a player like Kenneth Grant, but there are guys later that they can get that make more sense, and pairing them with, let's say, a Walter Nolan or a Derek Harmon or something like that. So I think as much as I like Kenneth Grant as a prospect, I don't like him as much with the 49ers, but I hate him with the Seattle Seahawks. So the two players I don't want Seattle to get are Kelvin Banks and Kenneth Grant. And then when it comes to the Rams, to me, the best team in the division, there are two players that I don't want them to get. And I've also said I don't necessarily want the 49ers to draft these guys at 11 either. Two very good players. But the Rams can't seem to solidify the linebacker position. It has been a mess for them. Much like I talk about Seattle's interior offensive line, the linebacker position for the Rams has not been good. They've had good players. They've had good players that are still contributing for other teams, but for whatever reason, just haven't worked out with the Rams. And a player that I think can really kind of change that for them would be Jahad Campbell out of Alabama. I think he's exactly what they need on defense. And the moment you add him to that defense with all the young studs they have on the defensive line, that's it. I mean, their defense is about as solidified as it can be outside of one position. And that other position is a position that I'm going to mention now, and that's Malachi Starks. I would hate for them to get an elite safety out of this draft as well. And I think Malachi Starks is probably the best. He's also extremely versatile. I talked about Jahdae Barron and how I've compared him to Brian Branch. I look at Malachi Starks much of the same way, except for preferably is probably a safety, but he can do a little bit of everything. That allows the Rams to be very versatile. So Jahad Campbell, Malachi Starks, I do not want to see in a Rams uniform. So just to recap, Cardinals, do not want to see them draft Jahdae Barron or James Pierce. Seahawks, I do not want to see them draft Kelvin Banks or Kenneth Grant. And Rams, I do not want to see them draft Jahad Campbell or Malachi Starks. All right, that's going to do it for tonight. Tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on Bleacher Report, I will be back for our final mock draft for the 49ers before the real deal next Thursday. Cannot wait. Hopefully, I see you in tomorrow's stream. Much love. Talk soon. Peace.